and welcome to Ask the Accountant. We've got cool friends. In today's episode, we're going to be talking to Ryan. Ryan is a Xero user. His firm is very Xero heavy. He goes to XeroCon and he talks a lot about Xero and its ecosystem. So what we're going to do is we're going to put to Ryan the 5 new updates that we saw from yesterday's QuickBooks Connect, and we're going to discuss with him to see what he thinks from a Xero user's point of view about those new updates. So welcome, Ryan. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to hear about everything. I managed to completely miss everything from QuickBooks Connect yesterday or whenever it was now. And my colleague who was supposed to attend unfortunately couldn't. So completely blind on this, and I'm excited to learn some new stuff.
So basically what you're saying is that we didn't put enough content out yesterday. We went live streaming, we everything else, but we missed a key part there. Okay, noted. We'll just put that down as feedback going forward.
Brilliant. Okay, so Ryan, basically Nick Williams, head of products for UK, walked out onto the stage about 9:30 yesterday morning, and he dropped 5 big updates. Now, there are lots of other things they're looking at, but that's more very speculative, like AI-powered VAT predictions and stuff. So we're not going to talk about those today because they are still very aspirational. This is the kind of direction we're going in. What we'd like to do is just go through the 5 big updates, basically. So, Aaron, what was the first update that got announced yesterday?
Okay, so he came on stage and his first big innovation was practice management. So their take on practice management, the way they're going to go for it is that they want to be making sure that it's going to be as deeply integrated with QuickBooks as it possibly can be. So their whole idea is that all of that wonderful data that we've got in QuickBooks, all of the opportunities there where we've got in terms of health checks and items like that, they want to be extracting that data and giving us, the accountants, the opportunity to be able to see that at a more holistic view and be able to see it all from there. So it looked exciting. It looked very familiar to another piece of software, didn't it?
It did. Yeah.
Do you want to say what the software is? It might be easier.
It looks like it's being powered by Pixie.
Oh, interesting. Did they say that?
No. But they also don't say what powers their payroll bureau or payroll product at all. So as people walked out of that room, there was people saying, that looks like it's being run by Pixie. That looks very familiar. We use Pixie. That looks like Pixie.
Okay.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on they're also coining a new phrase. So they're calling, so they now call QuickBooks Xero Sage Finance Management Systems, or FMS for the jargon.
Yeah. So FMS has definitely been around for a while. It's quite a common term in the, I guess, globally, but not something we really refer to as accountants in the UK. So I'm not that surprised, given, I guess, QuickBooks' global reach, that they're trying to standardize that as a term. I'm not sure it's something that's going to get much uptake at all from their user base, because I don't think anyone's going to refer to it as an FMS going forward. But I think practice management's interesting because Xero have Xero Practice Manager, which is basically powered by Workflow Max. So similar, I guess, what they're doing, potentially, hypothetically being powered by Pixie. Now, Xero Practice Manager has been heavily embedded in Australia, but has had little uptake at all in the UK, mostly around issues regarding filing of accounts and work papers. So did they talk anything about the filing of accounts integrations from that side at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole new update. So that'll be the next update we talk about. So yeah, I mean, this bit from practice management point of view, what they're trying to do is workflows, tasks, linking your Zama AML and stuff like that. So basically, who they're competing with here is Accountancy Manager, Center, Client Engager, Pixie, indirectly.
They never confirmed that.
Well, no, they've not confirmed that, but speculation on the ground floor is. So yeah, so what are your thoughts on them trying to compete with those, what we would probably class as best in class?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, so if we look at what Sage are doing, they're trying to be agnostic. They're opening their system up so no matter what FMS that you use, you're going to be able to utilize the the Sage suite. Xero is very much down just a, heavily you need to be a Xero firm. If QuickBooks are doing the same, so it'll be, you have to be kind of a purely QuickBooks firm, I think they'll struggle to get traction because of just how broad the reach is in the UK with lots of clients using different systems. So, but if you're doing billing, you're doing timesheets, you're doing job management all through the system, and it's got a deep integration into your main accounting platform, there's definitely benefits there. It's been shown, demonstrated over in Australia how effective and efficient that can be. And if they're trying to do that in the UK, they would have an edge over the likes of Xero and Sage because they still haven't got that right.
Yeah, so we've seen there is connections to the other elements of them. So they've got the opportunity to connect to Xero, etc., but you're not going to get that deep integration as you can expect. So there's a trade-off at that point. You'll still get some of the functionality and probably enough to warrant it, but you won't have the clever source, the bit that they're really wanting to showcase. For me, though, and I don't know what you guys would see it as, but we keep coming back to this whole point, like who's this aimed at and what's it for? For a new practice starting up now, this sounds brilliant, doesn't it? Like an absolute great idea. If you're going to go with QuickBooks or if you're going to go with Sage or with Xero, you've now got options on all three platforms, and ultimately you're going to be looked after. When it comes to likes of practices who have already got a practice management solution and possibly looking to go the other way, then for me, and we need to play with this enough to find out, but for me, I'm seeing this as an opportunity to work alongside existing practice management solutions. Utilize that deep integration, get that health score of a client, that sort of thing. Is that sort of thing you've ever been able to use from a Xero sort of thing? Is that something you've ever had the opportunity to do?
Well, I mean, it's tough because the Xero practice manager is not aimed at the size of firm we are. In mid-tier firms, that Scrutton Bland are, we're looking at more, I guess, broader. Like, for example, we wouldn't use a Pixie. Pixie would be too simple for us. Even the likes of accounting manager, we're kind of at that CCH practice engine level. So it's not, my gut is it's not aimed at us. And it probably makes sense not to be aimed at us. The bit that I find interesting is, are they reacting to what Sage and Xero have done? And is it needed? I get frustrated when the likes of the FMS solutions start building into practice management. Do they need to do it? Why don't they just open their APIs to connect into other systems and do that more effectively? But focus on what you're good at. Stop trying to broaden it. The bit I guess I'd like to know is, are they charging for it, or is it free as part of working with QuickBooks?
So there was no pricing information on the day. My understanding is it will be a paid-for feature. Someone in the room is under a non-disclosure agreement, so he couldn't possibly say. But my understanding is that it is going to be a charge. Whether there's a level that's not chargeable or a size that's not chargeable, I don't know. But my understanding is that if they're using someone else's powerhouse to power this, they've got to be financially compensated for that. So are QuickBooks going to take that on the chin, or are they going to try and recoup some of that? I suppose would be the question we need to ask.
To clarify, Ryan, as well, we got no pricing at all yesterday on any of the products we're going to talk about. This is all very much, let's get the positives out of the way. Let's talk about the positives, all the benefits. And at some point, we'll find out what the pricing structure is going to be.
I mean, that is odd. That's an odd approach, I'd say. Obviously, it's good to announce things, and I assume these are all features that are live as of now.
Betas go live, I think it's next week for a lot of them, but that's a very closed beta network, and it's mainly April they're going for as a live product for a lot that they're talking about.
Yeah, and I understand obviously not making pricing the big thing you shout about on stage, but having the information not there is odd. I mean, even when Xero announced Xero Go, they didn't really talk about the pricing on the main announcement, but it became clear throughout the day at XeroCon what that pricing would be. And I completely agree with you, Johann. I think they need to charge something. And normally the incentive is that the platforms use is that as you onboard or have more clients, the practice management side becomes cheaper or free, because obviously the scope and the amount you're paying for the subscriptions for the software, for the various licenses, start to cover the cost of the other add-ons such as practice management. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go down that route. Yeah, I mean, Pixie's a good tool. If they're using it to power it, I would expect it to be pretty good. So interesting. If that is what they're doing, interesting.
Cool. So put yourself in the shoes of a new accountant or bookkeeper. You're starting up your practice. You're looking at which FMS platform to look at. Would this update and release from QuickBooks sway you from looking at Xero to now looking at QuickBooks, because it's built in and it's potentially more powerful than the practice management tool that's in Xero, which I believe is also not available to smaller Xero users? You have to have a certain amount of licenses and points on their partner program, don't you, to get into it?
I believe you can, but you have to pay for it. So maybe that same model. Once you're a silver member, it becomes free, but you have to kind of get to that scale. So yeah, would it sway me? I don't know. I think it would be a consideration. It would be worth me considering. I'd have to see more of how it operated. Does it at like small owner? Because I don't care. I don't care about Xero Practice Manager if I'm using Xero. I'm looking at what is the tool that's going to work with my clients, going to make the rest of my life easier. I don't really care about, because you can get other practice management solutions that will put in data. So I generally go down best of breed and connected APIs rather than something that's all under a single label. My thing with QuickBooks was they had a much bigger announcement with QuickBooks Online Advanced over the summer.
Yeah. So before we go on to that, like, if I change that question a little bit to you, and same question that Johan's just said, but instead of swaying from a practice management, if you're going to sway from something like Dex Precision, the whole idea of keeping how clean your data is and looking at that sort of data, would that sway you at all? If you were already on Dex Precision and this could do what it was saying, but in a more, because ultimately it's got unlimited amount of data it's looking at. It's not looking at the APIs. It's not limited to what QuickBooks is allowing people to see, is it? In theory, this solution can go as deep as it'll ever need to go. Would that sway you at all?
Yes, it would. But, and there's a big caveat on this, you've got a number of players in the market that do this now, and I don't think any of them are doing it brilliantly. I'd say Dex Precision is probably the market leader in that kind of data analysis point. And so, because I've seen so many vendors on this, I generally go in quite skeptical. Is it just giving us data for the sake of data and actually not value with that? So yeah, I think they've got a massive potential, and I'd be much more swayed on that. If that is good, yeah, that's going to sway me more so than the practice management side.
Awesome.
Fair enough. Okay, so what was the second update, Aaron?
So we moved on to, as you already alluded to, QuickBooks Advanced. And I think me and Johan's kind of talked about this already. It's about the fact that announcement there wasn't probably designed for me and Johann. This was basically to the room, because there's still a lot of people who don't even know it exists. So it's kind of that trying to tell everyone again, explain that it's there. They were explaining there was a few updates here and there. If we're completely honest, those updates are a soft touch at this point in time. Those updates themselves do need work to be able to kind of be fully embedded. And I suppose if we think about it, it's the first live conference that they've had to announce it. So even though it feels almost old news at this point, it is actually probably new news for most of the people who are there. So yeah, we had the announcement of Advanced. So exactly what we already know. It's just kind of building on there.
Yeah, I mean, QuickBooks Online Advanced is a big step. Obviously, it's been over in the US. It's been incredibly successful in the US, and bring it over to the UK. You're not going to get all features straight away. I think that's understandable. It's like, are the features they're releasing going to make a big difference? And what I keep saying to Xero, and you might be saying the same things to Intuit, is that They have built now an app marketplace, an app store that enables businesses to build a modern ERP and grow through that and to get to quite a reasonable size. If they do get to that level, they don't really want to move away from it. We saw a great piece recently where a business that was going around social media, where a business, which I think you guys covered actually, but correct me if I'm wrong, where a business literally had a funeral for QuickBooks because they were moving from QuickBooks to NetSuite, and that shows how deeply, and I know they were doing it in a joking way, but shows how deeply you kind of get ingrained into a system that works effectively, and how hard it is to move away when it works for you. So I think QuickBooks Online Advanced has basically enabled them to scale and grow and work with those businesses that are growing in size. Not expecting it to I guess leap off the shelf straight away, and maybe this is maybe they talked about it because it's not doing that. Because I know that Xero have done the same, where about a conference, I'm not sure it was the last XeroCon before, they started talking a lot more about practice management because it wasn't doing very well in the UK. They're kind of identifying, we need to do something, we need to trigger it. That Xero Ultimate Edition, which is just bundling lots of stuff together, is just a way of them trying to sell the add-ons that are not getting enough traction. My gut is that they're probably having to reiterate this because it's just not quite got the traction that they hoped in the first 6 months, or less than 6 months maybe, since it went live.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think we as an industry are still trying to find the space that QuickBooks Advanced sits in. I'm looking at my clients, and whenever I review my clients and go, do they need Advanced, or are they fine on QuickBooks Plus? 9 out of 10 times we're looking at going, well, actually QuickBooks Plus is still fine for these guys. We don't need that next step up. So if if heavy users of QuickBooks are still trying to find that niche that it services well, then the sales aren't going to be high, are they?
I think the big thing, I know I'm kind of rehashing content here, but the big thing is the fact that as accountants, this is where it becomes invaluable to us. Like our firm, we moved over from Plus to QuickBooks Advanced, and straight away we're starting to see where those actual extra bits are. You've got the opportunities to do automation. You've got the opportunity to bring in better reporting, and suddenly we're using it for our own firm to start finding out and start making those trigger points go, where we can start thinking to ourselves, actually, this is what it's designed for. These are the clients it's going to work for. So I think as accountants, we need to be using it more and more to get there. And then revenue recognition was a new one, wasn't it? So it's just been announced, and for accounting firm, that's great news. That could be quite a nice one less thing we've got to worry about going forward to get our balance sheet right. So yeah, I think we as an industry, we need to embrace these sort of things a little bit more, just so we can find out what they're for. For you, Ryan, do you think Xero is going to kind of move into that space at some point? Do you foresee that? Is that kind of their next move, or what do you think?
Well, I guess the last announcement of XeroCon down to Xero Go is not really showing that, is it? They're trying to go in the other direction and go down to the micro business side. I think, Aaron, you make a really good point in that if we see the value in it for our firms, then there must be value in it for clients. It's really just being creative and thinking of how this works. And actually, I think a lot of it comes down to what our client base is. QuickBooks Online Advanced is massive, in my opinion, for the app integrators, the digital transformation specialists that are looking to do this, because most of those will do a lot of work with Xero because it's got a bigger app store. It's the first that apps build into, just because of the way that their APIs are built. But you hit a transaction limit, and it's not a solid transaction limit, it's a soft transaction limit, but you're wary of that if you're making a recommendation. And we have many businesses in this space, kind of 1 to 10 million, where they're flirting with this transaction limit. So having an alternative, and where QuickBooks is with its app marketplace now, it's much more compelling to go, well, we could go on QuickBooks Plus now because you're fine with Plus, but you've got that scale as well of moving to QuickBooks Online Advanced, and the granularity regarding the users and backups if you need it. It's a much bigger argument now when we're doing our system recommendations. And realistically, since that announcement, we have been investing more time researching QuickBooks. So it to us, at least as app implementers, it has shown the value, or the potential value, and we can see the future with that. Whether Xero is going to do it, I keep telling them they have to. I think there's a big problem if they don't move into it. who knows? They've got a new CEO and a new chief product officer. So we have no idea what's going to come.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's if QuickBooks are going into that space, which traditionally is covered by Sage in the UK, then Xero needs to move in that direction at some point or get left behind.
And you say traditionally covered by Sage, but Sage are moving away from Sage 50. They're actively getting their users to move into the cloud and Sage Business Cloud and Sage Intacct. And between Sage Business Cloud and Sage Intacct is a huge void that QuickBooks Online sits nicely in. So there's this big opportunity, and I agree with you. I think Sage and Xero need to do something about that, because otherwise they get these clients, then ultimately they want these clients to grow and they'll disappear. But Xero have always said our space is the small business. We don't want to focus away from what we're good at. We see growth in the market. How hard is it to just allow more transactions? I mean, really?
Yeah. I mean, is there any stated facts and figures that we can only do so many transactions in QuickBooks? I know it's a real known quantity in Xero that there's a transaction limit, but I don't think there is in QuickBooks, is there?
No, it's never been known. But then again, Advance has never been pushed at transactions. It's been pushed at putting new features in, hasn't it? So I suppose that's where it comes down to.
Cool. Okay, so that's the first two features. Go on, sorry, Ryan.
No, I was just going to say that's just because QuickBooks is naturally slower, you see, so you don't need to worry about slowdown.
Oh, he got the first dig in. We missed him to the first dig.
The burn.
So bank reconciliation there?
Yeah, so how do you do bank reconciling?
Okay, so we're going on to the next announcement, aren't we? So they're going into the payroll bureau space. Term comes up again, FMS. So they're going to be FMS agnostic. So we're going to making sure that you can send your journals to any of the particular bookkeeping solutions you're using. And it's QuickBooks Advanced Payroll, which I don't know if you've ever used, Ryan, but really good tool. But it's giving us the opportunity to not have to do it within QuickBooks itself, but as a bureau, we're going to have access to be able to have multiple clients, set automations, and treat it as a bureau solution. So cloud-based payroll, very powerful payroll, to be honest. I keep saying, and I've been swayed and told the kind of been proven wrong, but I still feel it's very overkill for a lot of clients out there. But for the clients that it's right for, it is a brilliant piece of software to use. And again, refer back to it's the payroll solution we use for our practice, and our staff love all the features and everything else that comes with it. So it's got opportunity to move into there. So it's Xero Payroll. I know it's got a bit of a bad rep, hasn't it? So would you ever expect that to be a bureau solution one day, or how do you feel from there?
I bloody hope not, Aaron. That's probably the worst area of Xero is the payroll, as I constantly tell them. So can I just check, because you're right, I have not used QuickBooks Online Advanced Payroll. Is this the one that's powered by KeyPay?
Exactly.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Again, we're not allowed to say that.
You're not, I am.
Okay, cool.
So in my opinion, KeyPay is probably one of the best cloud-based payroll solutions in the market. And obviously, if that's powering what will be the bureau solution for QuickBooks, that is brilliant. KeyPay already has this functionality, so my guess is there's probably not a lot of development apart from deeper integrations or the wrapper around from an Intuit perspective. It obviously makes sense to be software agnostic, because that is how KeyPay is built. Interesting, the fact that KeyPay has now been built, I keep saying KeyPay over and over again, so if we're not allowed to say it, you'll have to beat me out a lot, is owned now by Employment Hero and is soon to be rebranded Employment Hero or EH Payroll. So they've obviously maybe doubled down on an agreement with them on white labeling and how that would work going forward, and maybe this is part of that, because I guess KeyPay will be slightly wary that they would want their HR tool to be something that has a deep integration. So maybe there'll be something regarding how they cross refer to each other. But that said, I think that's a great thing. Timing is perfect. You've just had the announcement of BrightPay Cloud, which most people's feedback is we're not switching to it. It has not got enough functionality to warrant us to do that if we're already on BrightPay. When KeyPay is already in there doing so much, just powering over the top of it, I think QuickBooks have a huge scope to do so much more with accountancy firms. Even those that aren't QuickBooks FMS users, and then introductory piece to try and get them to actually use more of the QuickBooks suite. I think that's a really good move by them.
Do you think that's going to be quite disruptive?
I think it can be. It really comes down with the marketing, doesn't it? Because generally QuickBooks marketing has been direct to client, mostly for its FMS. You obviously got the likes of you that sing about the brand, but they do less with the partner network than Xero do, who go heavily with accountants and kind of push most of their marketing that way rather than direct to client. So there'll probably be a need to be a bit of a pivot from strategy there. I think we're seeing that a little bit more anyway. We're getting more engagement from our liaison at QuickBooks, so I think they're trying to align probably with these announcements that are coming out and the changes. So yeah, I think it could well be a disruptor. You've got Sage 50 payroll, which is probably coming to the end of its life or towards the end of its life, which most firms use. You've obviously got Sage I don't know what it's called now, Sage Cloud Payroll, which isn't quite as advanced, but has Sage HR embedded on it. So I think there's lots of payroll bureaus that are deciding what to do, and the timing of it works really well.
Yep. Cool. Positive outcome for QuickBooks there.
Yeah, we don't know the pricing, etc., but
we've heard speculation and stuff, but until they announce proper pricing, we won't know how competitive it is. What we have been told is to expect them to be extremely aggressive and competitive with their pricing model.
Oh, that doesn't sound like QuickBooks at all, penetrative pricing in the UK.
Moving on.
A few moments later.
Okay, next, so that's practice management, QuickBooks Advanced, Payroll Bureau, which sounds like it's probably the most disruptive potential out of the lot. The next one was
Books to Tax, going into Pro Tax. So the idea here is, just like Xero's already had for a while now, is it like a couple of years it's been, the ability to do FRS 105 accounts directly in the solution. It's very much built around the work paper solution. So it's a solution it's been using for a long time and pushing for. And one of the good things about this is it's been built from the ground up. So this was completely innocently designed from Intuit themselves. So far, it is a basic tool, as you can imagine. They've already got a workflow or a timeline together in terms of what they want to bring to market afterwards. So they know that they've got to go on to more complicated accounts afterwards. So it's a softly start, but from what we can see, it is that ability to have very much an integrated, quick and easy way of creating simple accounts. So what's your thoughts on that one?
So I guess my first question, which I don't know if you know the answer to, but is the flow from the ledger to the work papers to tax, or is it ledger work papers, ledger tax?
Ledger work papers to tax.
Yeah. You don't go back to the ledger. You can post your adjustments from the work papers into the ledger without having to go back into the ledger.
Perfect. So that makes a big difference already, because that's a massive problem with Xero Tax, in the fact you have to post stuff back through. So if you are a training firm, it means that you can't see your financial statements or draft financial statements until the adjustments are posted through, which if you've got a junior doing, you don't want to if it's a live client file, because God knows what they're going to push through. So that makes sense. That sounds like they've obviously got a lot of feedback and good guidance to build that in that way. Realistically, this is probably more of a reaction to others in the market having this. Obviously, Xero did it, and then Sage have kind of done something similar on a basic level. I think it's more we need. If I was QuickBooks, something we need to do something. If we're going to do it, let's do it properly instead of rush it out. And because they could have done something, a year ago, and instead they've delayed it. I mean, this is kind of ties into the practice manager side, doesn't it? If you are very QuickBooks, I assume this is what you'd go down the route of, especially if it's free. If it's chargeable, then you kind of have to weigh it up against other solutions out there. It's a big weakness in the ecosystem, which is the ability to file accounts and tax. If they open it up so that you can bring in data from other systems as well, that's great. If it's more that you need to get data into a QuickBooks file to be able to do it, it starts probably reducing its usefulness. But that depends on business size. If you're a smaller accountancy firm, it kind of makes sense. Whatever your main platform is, that's where you file your accounts and tax from. If you're a QuickBooks user, it's probably going to be really helpful. Oh, and the other thing I want to ask is it just for accountancy practices, or is it open for businesses to file direct?
Yeah, so just as accountants only feature, they've committed that that's going to be where it's going to stay, at least for the long term. There's no plans to bring it to clients, which I do feel is a little bit of a missed opportunity, but you can understand why, and especially in its current state where it is very much driven of, the accountant who's going to send that does need to know a little bit about what they're doing to be able to get to the end result, to get it out, because it's not all singing or dancing at the moment in terms of automations with things like director's loan notes, for example. So it is very much free form in that sort of respect. But just to your point about other software being used, you can, for the corporation tax, you can definitely bring other elements. You can start from scratch if you need to and bring it in from there. But you're right, from an account production side of things, you will need a QuickBooks license. So that's how many times is that going to be useful for you, that you file in your tax return, but you don't need the accounts. But yeah, the option's there if you do need it.
Yeah, well, Xero have the same structure. It's quite standard, that you have to be using a license. You have to be paying for something if you're going to be, filing it, which kind of makes sense. I think, come on, let's look at what QuickBooks or Intuit have done over in the US. Everything is becoming a hybrid approach. Everything is collaborate with your advisor. So it would make sense, if they need to roll it out in scale to get traction, get feedback, that you go down the accounting channel first. Would I expect them to then kind of move this more to a hybrid approach longer term? I think if they're following the success they've got over in the US, that will ultimately come. And that would be the biggest disruptor in the marketplace if they went down that route.
Yeah. And yeah, in regards to pricing, this is just a value add to QuickBooks accountants. There's no plans for pricing it whatsoever. So yeah, it's a value add, and they've made that commitment.
Yeah, I think it's great for those that use QuickBooks heavily. I think it's likes of U2 and similar firms. I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this. I think others, is it going to make a big difference? I don't think so, especially as it's they're behind the curve at the moment. So it's more, if I looked at this tactically, it's more of ensuring our clients don't leave, our partners don't leave, rather than trying to secure new ones.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to look at is if you're going to start a new practice now, you're in the best possible place, aren't you? We've already mentioned it, the ecosystems for Xero, Sage, and QuickBooks, they're now complete in each one, aren't they? Like, if you choose which flag you're going to fly with, then you're going to be able to start practice out from day one. And I think that's where it starts to see that excitement, doesn't it? Because it gives us an opportunity to start bringing these newer, fresher firms in, and the barrier to entry is just pretty much nothing now, is it? Other than the qualifications and everything. But you think back to what it was before. At one point, you had to have some sort of server so you could be running something like Iris, wasn't it? And now we've moved a long way from that. So I think that's where the excitement comes from.
Agreed. And I think that you see a lot more people getting frustrated in larger firms and going off and setting up on their own now, because it is easier to start that and you kind of hit the ground running. The biggest problem is covenants, really, and a cost of living crisis and taking the plunge.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So what was that? 4 updates? Cool. So the final update was they have reworked their Pro Advisor program. So they've always done their core training and advanced training. And then they've always had a few bits of materials available to help new startup accountants and bookkeepers learn the very basics of like marketing and stuff. But it's never been great content. It's always been a bit hidden out of the way. because I don't think they were overly proud of it. But they've now revised all of that with their Pro Advisor program. Now, Aaron, you're really heavily involved in this. So do you want to explain what we've done, what the changes are, etc.?
Yeah, so this was their final one more thing moment. So we were told there was 4 updates, and then there was this 5th extra mic drop one. But no, I'm really excited about it. I'm probably in the minor, but it is about gamification of the training side of things. So the idea is that there's that badge system, and you want to collect all your badges. There's the opportunity to win prizes and points and everything else that goes with it. But ultimately, because it's more sharp and shorter training than the likes of the training team that I'm involved in, it gives us an opportunity to go more into depth into elements of QuickBooks that maybe are underutilized or not understood as much. So it gives us a kind of opportunity to talk about that sort of stuff. And yeah, I generally think it's quite exciting. It's hard, isn't it? Like for us, we'll always take the training and because we want to show that forward and we want to kind of get the best out of it. But getting your team to want to do training is really difficult. So this is just one of the options, and hopefully this is a solution that's going to make it more attractive to get your team members more invested within training itself. So yeah, what do you think to this? Do you think it's a good update? Would you like to see Xero doing something like this? What's your take on it?
Perfect timing, Aaron. So if anyone that's listening has kind of ever followed me on LinkedIn, they will see that I had a rant recently about Xero's product updates and kind of how stale that had become. And following that, I've kind of been invited in to kind of see what Xero currently got in development in that area. And they are doing something in that which looks interesting. And I don't know the details of what QuickBooks were released, but what you've just said sounds very similar to the considerations at Xero, and echo what has been successful by other solutions in gamifying education. So, everything that we do now from a tech platform is about gamification, trying to get you to interact with it as soon as possible and as often as possible, and make it competitive to some extent. Because if there's a little bit of healthy competition, you want to invest more. Completely agree with you in that this it's a challenge sometimes getting people to do it. Likes of us that want to be deeply involved in this, the ecosystem and the products themselves, kind of throw ourselves in fully, but others are more seeing it as a chore that needs to be done. The bit that I get concerned about is when we start fragmenting, it can detract from the overall value of the status, because just like in, I guess, the accountancy qualifications, when you start bringing too much choice in, then there's not enough of the core that enables you to actually kind of state that I know enough about this product. Don't know enough about the details of what's been released. I assume they've probably got this all covered. But I think the main thing, the key thing that's come out is how long ago that both QuickBooks and Xero released an education platform. It just got to its life where it needed to be refreshed, and both products are doing that. QuickBooks have managed to release something first. It sounds like Xero is going to have something that's going to be very similar that comes down the path. And I think it's really just an update for modern times that will get us utilizing the systems more effectively. So definitely a positive. And yeah, I would expect more people to interact with it, and just hopefully it's just something that's easier to engage with, because systems have come on, and the education platforms generally, because I've done both. I've done QuickBooks and Xero. Just a bit outdated and a bit more traditional, should we say?
Yeah, I'm hurting a little bit at the moment, but don't worry about it. Don't worry. Yeah.
Did I somehow inadvertently moan about your involvement in this?
My baby, yeah. but what did you think to recertification with QuickBooks? Any comments on that? Did you do it this year?
No. So admittedly, I'm probably not actually currently certified. I did the course, so the original certification, probably 3-4 years ago, and it just felt a bit clunky and a bit painful when I did it. Obviously, where it is now is probably not the same as what it was back then. But I know a lot of the underlying architecture that enabled it would have been similar, because unless they're going to do a refresh like they're doing now, it's not going to be, it's just not going to be as modern and as effective. So by the sounds of it, you guys have been at least somewhat involved in whatever this new platform is, and I can only assume that that's going to have had a massive positive effect on it.
Brilliant. That's the 5 updates. I mean, what's your overall impression, Ryan? Is that do we think that was a good batch of updates? I know we all think QuickBooks has been a bit quiet, and there's not been huge news from QuickBooks in a while, other than QuickBooks Advanced back in September. Do you think it might have been worth the wait?
Worth the wait is probably not the right term, purely because I think everything has to be released when it's ready to be released, and so we don't want anything rushed, do we? We would prefer a good system to come out rather than a rushed one that then takes further development. We've seen that. You've had releases, especially in the Xero ecosystem, where it's just not worked because they've kind of rushed something. I would say yes. I would say this year, 2022 and 2023 have been big for QuickBooks in the UK with the releases, which has been the opposite of where Xero have been. So Xero obviously did a lot and QuickBooks were quiet, and then it's kind of pivoted, and now Xero, frustratingly, seem to just be releasing new reports every blooming quarter, whereas QuickBooks have got new functionality. Now the big thing that I think is going to be a disruptor in this space will be obviously what Xero are trying to do with locate inventory over in the US, and what QuickBooks will do to pivot to deal with that. Now I know QuickBooks they bought TradeGecko. Yeah, is that now fully embedded?
In the US it is. In the UK at the moment it's been closed down for us, so we have no access to it at all, not even the original TradeGecko. But in the US they have started to bring that in, and they're going down the same as what you said there, the inventory side.
Yeah, I think we've had over in the UK with inventory, we've had a consolidation of apps where there was a lot of choice, and it's kind of boiled down to a couple, no more than a handful, and it just means that area has become a bit stale. And I think both systems have the ability to add inventory because of their purchases, and how they bring that across into the UK will be a big thing. It'll be interesting over the next few years to see who gets to it first.
Definitely. I think the only update I'd say, or the only final bit I'd say on the update, is that maybe just so to keep you in the loop in here, Ryan, is that the big message for us as this update and how this has appeared to us is from passionate users and key users for them, is that we went from being accountants first to back to the client, and we were told it was back to being accountants first as their kind of a message. You must admit, like this is a very accountants first announcement, isn't it? Like each one of the pain points we've got and each one to solve in there. So I think that's been the positive message we had for those 5.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it was very clear that going back a few years, Intuit was not winning in that accounting space, and so pivoted to where they knew, which is the direct to market route. Get a core group of accountants and advisors that actually really add value to it, readdress how they approach it and attack it again. And they've done that effectively with what they've released. Now, because obviously their biggest market is the US, and the way they interact with accountants over there is very minimal. Everything's kind of direct to market, just because of the way the advisor and client engagement works over there. It's much more compliance led rather than advisory. That I think that they've been learning a lot since they've been coming over to the UK, and it sounds like they've really listened and taken that on board. And I think that's a massive positive step. And I agree with you. I think this is less about the actual products for accountants, in my opinion. With this release, it's actually more about the focus. It's about, we've changed, we've pivoted, we're listening, we're coming hard at the accountancy sector.
Brilliant. That's the fact that it's someone that wasn't at the event yesterday has just listened to the updates that have been announced, has come out with the same conclusion. Tells me they're getting their message across. XeroCon, as a final question, Ryan. XeroCon's not happening this year in the UK, is it?
It is not. No, they've. I'm not entirely certain why. They said they've changed it to a global event, but I would have thought a global event is that it's on in every place at the same time, which doesn't seem to be happening. So I assume it's cost related, because Xero became quite an expensive thing for people to go to. I assume it's cost related, and that they've kind of deferred till 2024 rather than 2023. Whether that's a positive sign or not, I mean, realistically, if you've got nothing to announce, why have a conference about it? And I think that's possibly where they are.
But I mean, two questions I got on that one. So I was about to ask you, do you think they'll announce at something like Accountex or something? Would they just use that as their, platform? Because they were so heavily branded at Accountex, weren't they? It was, they did brilliantly. It was, as soon as you walked through, it was this Xero tunnel and everything else, wasn't it? So my question was, do you think they're going to announce that? But it doesn't sound like it. But the other thing I'd say is with Xero, I mean, is it? No, in fact, let's just leave it at that, because otherwise I'll get ourselves in trouble. But go ahead.
No, Aaron, I think it's worth kind of talking about it. Like XeroCon grew into something that was not about the product anymore. It was about the accounting market, the accounting marketplace in the UK. You had obviously lots of people that are heavily into Xero, but lots of people that weren't, that would go, and it's about just sharing knowledge, gaining knowledge, and it was just about the experience less so than the updates. And going to, I missed QuickBooks Connect this year, but I've been to them in the past, and it felt more like a traditional accounting conference, similar to what Sage Summit was. You're going there for information, for updates, less so for the experience. And I think it's going to be a bit of a miss in the wider UK landscape to not have XeroCon around. That does have opportunity, and we've got the Digital Accountancy Show, which has become huge. That's out in June, and all I hope is that anyone that's listening that would normally have gone to XeroCon or does go to QuickBooks Connect goes along to that, because it's an incredible show.
Yeah, and it's bigger and better than ever before, isn't it, this year? So
indeed, new venue, bigger.
Yeah, no, I think, and I do also think there's a lot of competition there, isn't there, in the conference space now. So paid for conferences are all of a sudden very challenging to justify versus all the free ones. But yeah, look, we need to wrap this up. We've got to move on. But thank you, Ryan, for your time today. Thank you for your insights and for listening and giving some feedback on your thoughts from someone that's not green through and through. But yeah, thank you for joining us. When is your next episode of DigiTools for an Accrual World coming out?
Well, that's a very good question, Johann. So it's all based on when we can get it through our editing system. So it should be out hopefully soon. But if anyone's listening that has not listened to any of our episodes, there is a brilliant one with Johann on in our back catalogue. So please do dig through our past episodes and listen to him, where we probably grill him a bit on QuickBooks, to be fair, and he does very well in rebutting our quite direct questions.
It's an absolutely brilliant podcast, one I really enjoy listening to, and it's what the industry needs. It's personality, it's character, it's humour, with all the latest news. So yeah,
and the
really
editing's spot on. So yeah, take it as long as it needs to come through. So because it comes out as a better product overall, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely, really good, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Ryan, for joining us today. We will sign off from there. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon when we see more releases from Xero or from QuickBooks to chat over.
Sounds good. Thanks. And invite me on anytime.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Ryan.
Brilliant.